now, though, we're going to turn to Illinois politics. Lawmakers passed a new state budget very early this morning after a marathon weekend session. Illinois lawmakers have now approved a record-setting $56 billion budget for the next fiscal year. It's the largest budget in state history, and it includes $800 million in new taxes. But lawmakers were not able to get a plan for the Chicago Bears quite across the finish line. Here to break things down for us is Brendan Moore, State House reporter for Capitol News Illinois, who has been part of a team up all night long following all of this. Brendan, thank you so much for being here, especially for what you guys have gone through this weekend. I want to start with these new taxes. A lot of progressive Democrats in Illinois were really pushing all session long for a couple taxes, including things like taxes on Illinois billionaires. They weren't able to get those through at the end, but there was a tax on social media companies. What is this one?
Yeah, so this is in Governor Pritzker's introduced budget back in February. It would basically tax social media companies on a progressive scale, starting with platforms from 100,000 to about 500,000, 10 cents per month for each user, all the way up to platforms with at least 1 million users that would be paying $165,000 fee plus 50 cents for each user each month. It's really targeted at, Facebook, Twitter, some of these big social media companies that are kind of omnipresent in our lives and have such an impact. And the state is looking for a way to recruit some of the or get some revenue from that. Although they're not necessarily banking on revenue from this just yet because they do expect to be sued.
And we should be really clear to people, this is a tax on the social media companies, not on the social media users themselves. But some other big taxes that already passed that had gotten a lot of attention online are on crypto and fantasy sports. What are these?
Yeah, so this would be a 15% tax on each, and then for fantasy sports, it would be operators would have to be under a licensing structure. These are again maybe kind of newer. I would say not newer industries, but industries that generally haven't been taxed in the past, and again, it's a way to generate piece together revenue for the budget. This would generate about $65 million, and so it is just one way they're trying to balance the budget.
Yeah, you bring up balancing the budget. This year's budget is relatively flat. We're talking about not a lot of new spending, just kind of trying to make ends meet. And one area that is new this year has to do with food stamps, I should say. Earlier this year, the Trump administration created new restrictions for SNAP or food stamps, and it's expected to make millions of people ineligible for the program. So how are Illinois lawmakers responding?
Yeah, so they created a new program, and I'm just going to read it very quickly to make sure I get it right. Families receiving emergency support for hunger, or FRESH, which would be for people who have either lost their SNAP benefits or have seen them reduced. And they would be eligible for a one-time $400 payment. And so this is essentially a pilot program. It's only for a year. It would cost about $70 million, but really it is to respond to some of these cuts seen at the federal level and the anticipated impact that it's going to have on a lot of Illinoisans.
Well, there's a lot of talk this spring about education funding, a lot of jostling for position when it comes to this funding. How did it all shake out in the budget, both for K-12, but also for higher ed?
I think the best word would be maintenance. The state continued on its trajectory with the evidence-based funding formula, an additional $300 million for K through 12 schools. One thing that is notable is that they did add back the $47 million in property tax abatements that are supposed to be included as part of that formula. That was paused last year. So that is pretty significant, especially given the high property taxes in the state. On higher ed, it was a fairly flat budget, which was disappointing for a lot of folks in the higher ed space. There had been some hope of getting a evidence-based funding formula for higher education this year, but that did not get across the finish line either. And then again, the funding was flat.
Well, something that I think has been talked about maybe the most this legislative session is the Chicago Bears. What came out of this weekend?
So the Senate passed a new version of a bill incentivizing the Bears to stay in Illinois. They passed it in the middle of the night, 3:30 roughly, and they sent it over to the House, which adjourned without taking a vote on it. So the House passed a bill, the Senate passed a bill, but neither of them passed the same version of a bill, which means it can't go to Governor Pritzker's desk, which means that the Bears, if they want to work something out in Illinois, will probably have to wait until lawmakers return for the fall veto session. Speaker Welch told my colleague Ben Zielinski that the House is not going to come back for a special session to deal with the Bears this summer. So we'll have to see if Hammond is real or if the Bears are just bluffing about maybe moving there.
We will have to see. In the few seconds we have left, what are Republicans saying about this budget as a whole? We know that Illinois has a majority when it comes to Democrats. So what are Republicans saying?
Yeah, I mean, more of the same of what we've heard the past few years. It was a party line vote. Republicans haven't voted for a budget, and I think since Governor Pritzker's first year in office, and they were concerned about the increased spending. As you mentioned, this is a record spend on the top line number for the budget. A lot of that is inflationary and increases in education funding and pensions, but they would point out some of the spending on social programs perhaps maybe a little bit too high for their liking. They appreciated that some of them were in the room a little bit more involved this time, but obviously with some of those tax hikes in there and some of the increased spending, they could not support it.
Well, Brennan, you have had a very long evening, a very long weekend. Thank you so much for your time today and helping us break some of this down.
It was a pleasure, Shelby.
For you guys at home, though, we have our political coverage and the incredible coverage from the whole team at Capital News Illinois up at WQAD.com underneath the As Seen on TV tab. James?